But we'll start with Barcelona. We needs must, only because, well, they beat Real Betis 5-1 in the Copa del Rey last night. But previous to that, of course, they won the Super Copa. Is this the, I suppose, the return of Barcelona in terms of title contention, David?
Yeah, I still think the league is very much wide open. I think, Atleti's sitting top at the moment, but I do believe Real Madrid and Barcelona can still win the title. There's just so much football to be played, and I'm not even talking about just Liga as well. All three teams have got other interests in terms of Europe as well, and we know what impact playing so much football can have on a squad and on a team, and it's about who can keep everybody fresh. I think Diego Simeone at Atleti has been brilliant with his rotation this year, perhaps the best he's been since he's been at Atleti. Real Madrid have had quite a few injuries and just not and had a lot of players out of form who they're trying to find form. And then Barcelona's the same as well. They've had injuries, they've had players come back, and then they've had players out of form, and some people perhaps carrying the team. So I think it's very, very wide open.
I guess the weird thing is, though, here, you look at that Super Copa performance and the previous performance in El Clasico as well, where they won 4-0 against Real Madrid. And after two such peerless performances in El Clasico, and they've performed really well in lots of other big games. You think of the 4-1 over Bayern in the Champions League, which was the best game I saw last year. And of course, Bayern are a team that Barcelona never beat as well. I think when you look at that level of style that Barcelona have been able to produce on a number of occasions so far this season. I mean, David, you and I were talking about it earlier, and I was saying I think it's the most aesthetically pleasing Barcelona since the 2015 Champions League winning team under Luis Enrique. It's weird, like for people who are casual Barcelona watchers and have seen those games, and they've seen the manner of those two Clasico wins, they'll look at La Liga table and think, hang on, how are they 6 points behind Atletico? Now, look, I realise there's a degree of absence because, of course, Atletico were able to take advantage of the fact they're away at the Super Copa. But nevertheless, the league is what it is. They don't have extra games to make up. And it's extraordinary, really, when they've put out such a high volume level of performance. Obviously, the league results have tailed off in the last month and a half. Like if we go back to before Christmas, it's remarkable to me that Barcelona are in the position where they are in the league. That they feel aesthetically as if they should be the champions, as if they should be, what we think a Barcelona team should be. Because they have been that on a number of occasions so far this season and in these big matches. I mean, it's funny because if you look at it from the Real Madrid perspective, Luka Modric said afterwards in his typically flat batting way, well, it's obviously not good if you concede 9 goals against your biggest rivals in 2 games. And that's the thing, it's hard to get past. But I guess Real Madrid and Florentino Perez are a little bit less knee-jerk than in the past. I think in a different time, and we talked about it on OTC YouTube earlier in the week, this may have got Carlo Ancelotti booted, this result, because you can't get 2 successive thrashings in El Clasico like that, and you can say, it's only the Super Copa, it was in Saudi. Every time Real Madrid play Barcelona, it has meaning. But actually, if you step back a bit and look at it, Real Madrid are in a great position. They're only a point off the top. They're 5 ahead of Barcelona. And you feel with Real Madrid, there's a load more to come from them because they've just been tuning up, really, for this first part of the season. Whereas Barcelona have hit these heights and they've still got the point disadvantage.
They've hit the heights. So, they won 11 of their opening 12. They had a 9-point lead over Real Madrid at one point and then obviously tailed off. I think a lot of that has been due to a lack of intensity that they had in those opening 12 games. Naturally, I guess it's very, very hard to maintain that again, especially when you play so much football, and then encounter other things such as injuries and such. And don't get me wrong, I don't think Hansi Flick is is blameless in this. I think some of the things that he's done, some of his rotations, some of his substitutions, I felt a little bit pre-planned rather than a bit more just proactive and looking in games at what's going wrong. So that's been a tough one, I think, for Barca. But on Real Madrid's point aside, yes, I think there's still a lot more to come to them, and they are going to have to peak at some point, and they just always do. And it plays into a part of what Andy's just touched on. That's why Florentino Perez hasn't reacted in a wild manner. And he just said, okay, look, we've got a good squad here. We've got players coming back. We've got players who need to find form as well. And I'll wait to see what happens there. And we'll get to the end of the season and we'll judge everything then. We'll see if Xabi Alonso's available, whatever it may be. But I still think there's a lot more to come from Real Madrid. And like I say, I think certain players need to deliver a lot more as well and get back to playing their real game. And unfortunately, in situations like this, when you are having a tough moment, certain players do certain things. I think sometimes Jude Bellingham has been trying to do everything and all at once, and just the way he is, and it's almost admirable in a way. It's kind of like this guy just really doesn't like losing. He really doesn't like seeing the team like this, but he does try to do everything, and sometimes that hurts the team. I think, I've said this before, I think he's still underrated, really. Nobody talks about him. I think Rodrigo is such a brilliant player, and you've already seen the difference with him coming back into the team. He's far more impressive than Vini Jr. at the moment. I really do like Rodrigo, and I think he might have a big say on Real Madrid's end of season.
You see, you're jumping the gun slightly, but let's include where Real Madrid are in the league as well as part of this conversation, because the next question, after you've eloquently answered the question that Andy sort of somewhat posed, that La Liga watchers will be saying, how can Barcelona be 6 points behind, given their performances of recent times? But you explained that really well. The next question is obvious, isn't it? Can they catch up? Can they make up those 6 points? I mean, there are two substantial teams between them and the La Liga title. Atletico 6 points ahead. Yeah. Real Madrid 5 points ahead. Can Barcelona really make up that time?
Absolutely. Everybody's still going to drop points. There's a lot of football still to be played. I still think all three of those teams are going to drop points and going to slip up at some point. They're also going to win games that they perhaps shouldn't. I think it's second week of March. Barcelona go to Atletico Madrid, go to the Metropolitano. That's going to be a massive game. What happens if they're just 3 points behind then? That game changes literally the entire scheme of it.
And Atletico find it very, very difficult to beat Barcelona over the last decade. That's something we have to point out as well. So from an Atletico perspective, they're on the absolute crest of a wave at the moment. 15 successive wins. But that can't go on indefinitely. And I guess what they've shown as compared to Barcelona is, and I guess this is what you would expect from Atletico, not necessarily this Atletico side, an ability to chisel out results. And I think that's really interesting that, they've evolved a little bit. And of course, the playing squad has changed a lot in the last couple of years in particular. But it's weird in that they've kind of refound a bit of 2014 Atletico with a completely different set of players, with a completely different profile of player, really. That they're back to a place where you trust them to defend, which Atletico haven't felt like that for a long time, have they? They haven't felt like they're capable of closing out 1-0ers, which is the difference between them last season and this season.
Yeah, I think it was probably the last year of Godin's time at Atleti, and then post that, they just found it very difficult, the interchanging back line, to get that solidity, that familiarity. Everybody for years always knew what that Atleti back four was going to be. Godin, Miranda, Felipe Luis, Juan Fran. Everyone knew that week in, week out. And to have that consistency is quite rare in football, because you get a lot of injuries, you get a lot of rotation and such. They just always had that back four. That never changed. And it was a hard thing for them to deal with, that post that. And we've discussed José Jiménez on the show before. I think ideally he would have been the heir to Godin. He played alongside him a little bit, and then we thought he would come in. Injuries obviously went against him, but like we've discussed on the show before, absolutely fantastic defender. Probably one of the top 5 in the world had he avoided injuries. So they found him in form. Fit and in form, that's helped them considerably. But the one thing that, and Andy's just slightly touched on this, Atleti can come into games against Barcelona and Real Madrid in very good form, playing really good football, but then they come into those games and they go against it and change their style just for that particular game. So I would implore them this time when they face face Real Madrid and Barcelona, carry on playing the football that has got you in this brilliant position. Because they change up so many times. Just continue with what you're doing. It's very good.
Is that why they can't beat Barcelona like Andy said?
Yes.
That's the reason.
Yeah. I think they regress into themselves. They feel the tension from it and they don't play the football that has got them into that position. It's been so annoying for Atleti. They've been doing this for years.
But I guess the other question with Atleti, we talked about how there's a margin of improvement for Real Madrid. There is for Atletico as well. I think clearly, because you think how much they've changed personnel-wise in the last couple of years. And they had a big summer in the transfer market as well. I don't think there's quite... I mean, I think you're edging closer to the point where Simeone, you can say, right, that's his best 11.
He's got confidence in his first 11 now as well, which might help them, from the point I've just made, not do that, not regress to that. I think they've got more confidence in their squad now.
That's true, but I don't think there's quite a nailed on first 11 yet. Like, he's pretty close. He's obviously closer than he was at the start of the season. But what Simeone has done better than anyone, to go back to a theme that David was talking about with Hansi Flick, he's used his subs better than anyone else. And that will help you win games that you're not playing particularly well in. And I think if you look at Atleti winning away at Barcelona just before Christmas, which a lot of people out there who watched that game would probably say that was a robbery, to semi-quote Renegade Soundwave. And I think if you go back to the game against PSG in the Champions League, they did exactly the same thing. They're getting battered for the whole game. They find a way to hang on and to win it. Now, that's not just luck. I mean, it's not entirely designed, because you don't go into any game thinking, right, let's get battered for like 90 minutes. It feels like rope-a-dope, but it's not quite like that. I don't think it's quite according to the plan. But to say, okay, when things are going against us, we'll find a way to hang on, and then our subs will freshen it up and win us the game. Well, yeah, and win us the game. But I don't think they go in totally with that plan. Is my point. So I think. I guess it's weird to sort of feel sympathy for Barcelona in the way that they've, played the system, and everyone's got this Dani Olmo thing in their minds still, and all the rest of it. Whoa. But I think in terms of aesthetics, as I've said from the beginning, the best team in La Liga, and they are so convincing when they turn it up in a big game, like these two games against Real Madrid, like these games at Bayern. I'm not convinced they can do that for the rest of the season. And I don't think they're not a title contender, but I don't think they're a favourite. I think one of Atletico and Real Madrid will win it. And it's funny, I think what has been the weird thing is, while Atletico have juggled their personnel, while Real Madrid have found a way to get the right blend and had to work on that, and of course they've had a lot of defensive injuries as well. Bizarrely, and it's something that Flick himself has touched on, since they've got players back, it's created an element of doubt. I mean, he's talked about there being an unevenness in fitness levels between the players who've come back and the players that you already had who... I mean, they looked such an intense, such a fit Barcelona in those first 12 games. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just the football. No one could live with them, really. Mm. And it feels to me that has dropped off a little bit. And Barcelona at their best... This Barcelona at their best are about the intensity. That's the drop they had on Real Madrid in the Supercopa. Real Madrid could not live with their intensity at all.
No.
But is that a template for being champions?
No.
Can you maintain that?
No, I don't think it is. And if you look at how many goals they've conceded as well. So they might score goals and they might take the game to opponents, but they will always give you opportunities. And if you have that quality, then you can punish Barca. And even some teams with lesser quality have punished them this season. So they'll have to improve in that sense as well. I don't think they can... They'll try to play in that manner, I think, against Atleti when they face each other. But I think Atleti will be very savvy to it. And I think we've got the Madrid derby as well in February as well. So there's some big games where it might what might really change things.
So all this makes La Liga, the second half of this La Liga season, very intriguing, actually.
Big time.
It is, yeah, really exciting.
And by the way, on Dani Olmo, I saw him posing with the Super Coppa, and he looked well happy. He looked well happy.
Well, he's on the pitch, of
Yeah,
course.
I was going to say, yeah. He's sick of those comfy seats.
Well, indeed.
You know what I mean?
But the question then, if we've been asking perhaps one of the questions, which is, can Barcelona catch up? Can Atletico hold back the coming charge that's, biting at their heels at the moment? Can they hold back the charge? Real Madrid, we never know what's going to happen there. Let's leave that. But from Barcelona, this transformed Barcelona, seemingly, can Atletico hold them at bay? I'm a bit concerned with what Andy said earlier on about, Atletico never beating Barcelona. But you've explained that one. But can they hold them at bay for half an entire season?
Yeah, I think they can. And I think there's a confidence within that squad from the players themselves, but also Simeone looking at it going, right, I finally got something I can really work with and engineer here. I'm not kind of, just sitting back and doing what I can with under severe limitations in terms of talent, in terms of ability. He's actually got a real squad now, and they should be going all out to win this title. And they are capable of winning it, yes.
Are you putting your house on it?
I'm definitely not putting my house on it. Mate, I've only just moved. I've only been in a few months. I'm not getting rid of it already.